All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. This session is ZTNA misconceptions and why it should replace your VPN. At this time, please silence your phones if you haven't done so already. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Tyler Aird and Hector Alcala.
All right, good morning, everyone. We know today is the last day of JNUC, and so we thank you for being here with us, especially after the party tonight or last night. So we appreciate you being with us this morning. My name is Hector Alcala. I'm a senior professional services engineer at Jamf.
My name is Tyler. I'm also a professional services engineer at Jamf. So what is ZTNA? So we remove the concept of completely trusting a device from any security equation. Any device with access to a network is considered not trusted until identity and compliance requirements are met, thus protecting your devices, your corporate resources rather, from outside and inside attacks. Zero trust network access. Go to the next slide. There we go. Sorry about that. So zero trust network access is not a new concept. There have been many other network and security concepts and technologies with a similar goal, including least privilege access, conditional access, microsegmentation, private access, and more. But in the end, they all have one thing in common. It's never trust, always verify, which is the philosophy behind zero trust network access. But what zero trust network access is not is a legacy VPN. And today we're here to explain why.
All right, so let's talk about why ZTNA is different from a legacy VPN. And most of you are probably here for just this specific topic. We believe there are 6 major areas of comparison. You have user experience, threat protection, scalability, security model, access control, and the architecture. Let's start with the security model and compare these two. We know VPN is considered a secured tunnel, and yes, it is. For those who can get into it, it's secured and encrypted, but the question is, who gets into it? Do we trust every authentication? Do we authorize all users just because they can successfully just authenticate? Your answer to this should be no. We never want to trust any device access to company resources because they're just authenticated properly. We want to have a series of extra checks to make sure that devices themselves are also secured. Legacy VPNs are designed around perimeter-based access. This relies on the assumption that once a user is inside the network, they are trusted. This is not flexible, and it is, of course, not secured in today's security standards. Let's talk about access control. This is actually related to the previous area. Users are granted access to the network, and they have indeed access to, guess what? The network, right? On the other hand, ZTNA is all based on granular access control. Another major difference is the underlying technology for ZTNA is looking at host names and IP addresses, which allows for app-based access. Think about a per-app VPN model.
So next we'll talk about the architecture. Most legacy VPNs are a piece of physical hardware, right, which require maintenance, IT resources, overhead costs, and are prone to failures, which may involve extended downtimes and could affect productivity for your end users. ZTNA relies fully on a cloud infrastructure that you don't have to maintain or patch, which helps reduce cost and allowing your team to dedicate resources to other areas. VPN will typically allow users to enter the network of resources once they have authenticated. But with ZTNA, we use the granular processes to grant access to specific applications or services within your environment so that not everything is exploited simultaneously within the same tunnel. Some examples are going to be per app VPN or even brokered connections via IP egress region. Now with the user experience, a traditional VPN, users must be signed in and have the service enabled at all times so that they have access to what they need to carry out the task for the day. On the other hand, with ZTNA, users have a back-end, lightweight tool that automatically connects and disconnects when users are trying to access a resource. So this eliminates the end user having to re-authenticate over and over again. VPN has been notoriously known to take a while when authenticating and often requires authentication if timeouts or restarts to the user's computer apply. This is understandable, of course, because there's that hardware part that's needed. I've worked with customers who are moving from VPN to ZTNA in the past, and the biggest difference that they've told me right off the bat is the difference when it comes to authenticating and having access to their resources is instant. It's truly a night and day difference.
Let's get into another area, which is threat protection. As you can see, this is all coming together. In most cases, these areas we've covered so far have direct impact with one another. If a perimeter-based VPN is compromised, the entire network is also compromised. On the other hand, since ZTNA allows for a very granular access all the way down to a single IP or host name, this helps with minimizing potential vectors of attack. Once a network is compromised, the bad actor can then access other potentially compromised devices regardless of their management state and create a major security impact across the entire organization. On the other hand, ZTNA is risk aware if implemented correctly and can deny access to a resource if the device is considered compromised. When it comes to scalability, how it is possible to scale your current legacy VPN, patching multiple appliances, configured load balancing. On the other hand, ZTNA is delivered as a service. And what do we mean by that? Someone else is in charge of doing exactly the patching and the infrastructure. So you're only in charge of building the policies that match your organization requirements. You spend time on what actually matters.
So next, let's talk about the underlying technology that brings all of this together, right? So there are three major components that separate legacy VPN from a next-gen VPN, which is access control, performance, and user experience. So let's dive in. So starting with access control, we're going to dig a little bit deeper here. Starting with the access control, we break it down to three main components. There's identity provider, management state, and risk assessment. Users must authenticate to an identity provider in order for ZTNA to work. And then regarding the management state, we can tell if the device is in a managed state or not, even if they are signed in with their identity provider. So think about like automated device enrollment, for example. Lastly, with risk assessment, it should check and verify many risk factors such as phishing and verifying if the operating system is on the newest version, just to ensure that your company's resources are safe. Next, we've got performance. So starting with low latency, it should transmit data incredibly fast using the efficient cryptographic tunnels. Hector's actually going to talk about that on this shortly. But with these tunnels, it should also allow for high throughput so that you have access to what you need instantly. And on the other hand, you should be able to also instantly disable that access. So with the next generation VPN technology behind ZTNA, a connection is never dropped. This ensures that end users keep the access to what they need when they need it. And ZTNA products should also work on multiple operating systems. So whether you have macOS, iOS, iPadOS, Android, Windows, you should be covered. It should also be user-friendly. So whether an application or a menu bar item, it should offer easy access to information for end users with just a single click or a tap. Additionally, push notifications can keep both administrators and end users informed about important activities, enhancing the overall experience.
All right, now that we wanted to share this major comparison areas because we believe they can make a real difference for you as you evaluate switching from a legacy VPN to a ZTNA model. And we also believe these are the cornerstones of our own solution, which is Jamf Trust. Jamf Trust is not just about the features, it's about how a solution can make it easy for you to handle access to your company resources. All of these areas that we discussed and more are the core of what Jamf Trust and Jamf Security Cloud bring to the table for administrators and end users. It's as simple as you can see, enable ZTNA from the menu bar, and users are ready to access company resources behind this infrastructure. There are additional benefits, as you can see on the screen, in addition to the 6 major areas that we just covered. Let me talk about the underlying technology. This is how it works in the back end. You have the Jamf Trust application installed on the endpoint, along with an activation profile, and Tyler will cover a bit more about the activation profile in a moment. Jamf Trust communicates to the Jamf Security Cloud via port 443, and the same port is used for your IDP authentication for the end user. Once the user has been verified, access policies are in place, and then for those access policies, we use the WireGuard protocol. By default, is port 32005. This protocol is high efficient performance with a modern cryptographic technique, and the traffic is passed through your specific rule, and users can now be really productive, right? We recommend there's a presentation from last year that goes more in depth with how this works, but this is a general overview for you so you can understand that how simple actually is in the back end, and especially how simple is for the end user experience. I'm going to show you also how Jamf Trust works in action on multiple platforms. So here we have a macOS computer. Users go to the menu bar. They'll select the option to enable. This is a first-time authentication, so they have to go through the IDP specific process. In this case, we're using Entra ID for the demo. Once they go through MFA, they follow potential conditional access that they have to go through. In this case, we had to update the password. And then when that's completed, then they'll see a green, you're all set screen, and that's all they have to do. Windows is very similar. They also go and enable the option for Jamf Trust, authenticate with their respective IDP. Again, this is going to follow the IDPs that we currently support. For this demo, we're using Entra ID. And you'll notice is exactly kind of the same with macOS. Authenticate, they're good to go. iOS, in this case, we have an iPad OS or an iPad model for the demo. They open the Jamf Trust application, authenticate. By the way, we have detailed instructions in our support articles, so we'll give you some resources at the end so you can take a look at this user experience as well, and how to deploy these applications to their respective platforms. All right, at the point, the device is ready to go. Last but not least is Android. Similar experience, open Jamf Trust application, authenticate, and you're good to go. In this case, there was no authenticator app installed on the Android device. We were using Entra ID, so there was a QR code displayed on the screen, and we had to set it up just for this demo. But you can see they can go through that process, and then Jamf Trust gets activated after, or user is authenticated. This will happen also on other platforms, so keep that in mind if the user is first time logging in or setting up MFA, they'll have to go through this process too. And it looks like we have to also update the password for this video. I made it faster, it's sped up, but it looks like it wasn't enough. There you go. Oh, perfect. So it's good to go.
So I love this quote. Stephen Hawking suggests that believing you know something when you actually don't can be more detrimental than simply not knowing it at all. It highlights how confidence in one's understanding can prevent further learning and exploration. And this quote brings us to our most common misconceptions. So the first one we've got here is ZTNA is just another type of VPN. This one's huge, and it's important to understand. As we've already discussed, VPN is broad access based, and ZTNA is a zero trust model. Never trust, always verify. Another one, ZTNA routes out traffic by default. This is also big. Not all traffic is routed through a single tunnel with ZTNA. This is where the granular processes come into play, and kind of like what we had talked about before.
Another misconception is once signed in, you're good to go. With ZTNA, this is actually never true. You can be signed in and meet the base list privilege access, and then if you click a phishing link, boom, you lose access to your company resources because we look at the risk level of that device, and you can configure to say if the risk level is high, I don't want this device to access my company resources. Same thing if the device is out of date. If it's not running the latest version of iOS or macOS, we can say, yes, you cannot access company resources. So it's not just sign in and you're good to go. There's an access policy behind that. Another misconception is just create an access policy and that's it. This is more common than you think. While you might believe that an access policy is sufficient for enforcing ZTNA, it is actually one part of the equation or the solution. ZTNA must work in harmony with your IDP, and Tyler will actually delve deeper into this next.
So I'm somewhat of a visual learner, and when I first thought about this entire process of zero trust network access, I thought, let's make a pie, okay? And I'd like to share that with you today. Here's my pie. So these are all of the following components that have each level in order to build a full access policy for ZTNA. So starting with the crust, this is what I call it. It's the crust, right? This is the activation profiles. Why do they matter? In short, this is what activates your devices, right? So they get deployed alongside the Jamf Trust app that helps define the configurations enabled on the devices. Next, we've got what I call the filling. These are the access policies. This is all the good stuff, right? So they define the access policies to your company resources. They can be set up as SaaS applications, enterprise applications. You can utilize domains, IPv4 addresses, subnets, network host names, and more. Then, from there, you can assign them to specific users, groups, and then you can decide how and where the traffic gets routed from there. The last ingredient is the top crust, or the identity provider configuration. So this is a hard requirement in order for ZTNA to work, and we do support Google, Okta, and Entra ID at this time. If you're using Jamf Connect and you're authenticating with Entra ID, we have a new feature called identity sharing. And identity sharing is going to share an access token from the client ID app registration within your Entra environment, and it's going to pass that over to the Jamf Trust application. So it doesn't require any additional login. This is coming soon for Okta. It's not available yet. If you're not using Jamf Connect, though, that's OK. It's not a problem because we're going to save the credentials to the user's keychain, which can then auto-authenticate to the Jamf Trust application. It's a win-win for the admin and for the end user. This is my favorite part. This is where you get to eat the pie. Go test it out. We do support all major platforms, as we talked about earlier. So we got iOS, iPadOS, macOS, Android, and Windows.
All right, let me show you a few quick demos on how you will configure 3 IDPs, Entra ID, Okta, and Google. For Entra ID, we create a trusted location, which contains all Jamf Security Cloud IP addresses. I should go back one more. There you go. Once you create that trusted location, you can go ahead and work on your conditional access policy to enforce ZTNA, or you can update an existing policy. What you can say is, for example, users coming from other IPs and not this set of trusted IP addresses, they are blocked from accessing resources, right? Then once you do that, you can go ahead and test out your ZTNA access policy. All right. For Okta, it's actually fairly similar. In Okta, we want to create an IP zone within your Okta security settings. You want to add a rule to an existing sign-on policy that requires the IP zone. You want to assign the policy to an app if it's not already assigned to it. You can select which specific apps will follow the policy. So maybe some resources that are sensitive for your organization, you want to have those behind ZTNA. Then once you do that, you go ahead and test your ZTNA policy. All right, and Tyler will talk about Google.
Yeah, so with Google, it's a little bit different. You're still creating what Google calls a trusted access level. One of the things that I wanted to point out, which on the screen you can see right here, you actually have to manually put in all the IP addresses because they don't allow you to upload any type of files or extensions inside our notation like Okta or Entra allow. So you got to go through, enter all these manually. Hector is going to talk a little bit more on this later, though, and how we can eliminate the use of all of those IPs and bring it down to 2 single IPs that can get assigned to your individual Jamf Security Cloud server that are unique to you guys. And then you follow the same protocols. You finish creating the context awareness policy with all of the IP addresses. It's a lot. And then you assign this to the application, assign it to the group, and then test it out.
All right, and it's done, right? Cool. So what about your private on-premises resources or cloud-based resources? There are 2 solutions for that. You can allow inbound access from Jamf's ZTNA via reverse proxy or firewall exception, or you can create a secured or dedicated encrypted connection between your network appliances and the Jamf Security Cloud using IPsec. We provide detailed articles on how to configure these connections for cloud infrastructures like AWS, Azure Cloud, and Cloudflare. This is for private cloud resources. We also provide instructions for network appliances like Sonic Wall, Palo Alto, and you should have a network equipment that supports custom IPsec configuration. You should be able to also connect with it using Jamf Security Cloud for users to access private on-premises resources. For those without specific dedicated on-premises network hardware, you can set up a quick connect instance within your network that can be used to allow users to connect to your on-premises resources. Additionally, and this is going to resolve the Google copy-paste for all of those IPs, you can request a dedicated gateway to route your organization's traffic to the internet using a pair of private or IP addresses, public IP addresses that are assigned to your account and not shared with other customers. One more thing that we wanted to also mention this morning, it's all about network relay. If you just need a way to provide a zero trust or a zero touch way to access resources, or if you have another VPN that is owned by another team and you can't convince them to switch or implement a ZTNA model, you'll be able to use network relay. And we believe this could be for those customers that may be tied to specific VPN.
Mm-hmm. It's device authenticated access to resources where user authentication is not used at the tunneling layer. So it's based on using managed device attestation. Instead, where devices are safe, compliant, and they're actively managed in your Jamf Pro instance, so that you can actively reach your sensitive resources.
We highly recommend, if you weren't able to attend that session, watch the recording later for Revolutionize Your Device Onboarding and Security with Managed Device Attestation and Network Relay. We put together a few resources for you, so feel free to scan the QR code and write down the URL, the Jamf IT JNUC-ZTNA. We have a few articles for you, including Apple resources around network relay, WireGuard documentation, IDP documentation specific to ZTNA. Mm-hmm. So feel free to please access those resources to learn more. We are ready to also answer any questions you may have. If we run out of time today, we'll be at the services booth throughout the day. So feel free to stop by and we'll be happy to,
in the expo hall.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Great job. Are there any questions? If there are, just raise your hand. I'll come right over. Great.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very clear. One question I had was, you talked about the device agnostic, I guess, installing ZTNA. How are you doing the validation of the status of the device for Windows devices if they're not in Jamf Pro to get the ZTNA to work?
So there is there's an MSI that you run on the Windows device, and when that runs on the computer, it links back to your Security Cloud portal, and it lets you know that it's active, and any policies and configurations that you have that are running through the Security Cloud portal should all flow through, and you'll see that it's active.
Right,
Does that answer your question? Cool.
I had a question about, we want to run an application on-prem, and we want our remote users to be able to get into that, but then when they come into the office, obviously we don't want them to be using a VPN to go, or Zero Trust to go out and back in. Is there a way that it can detect that it's inside that's not IP-based? Because the private sectors, a lot of coffee shops are now using 10 dots and a whole lot of ranges that may mimic enterprise IP addresses.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for different ways to detect that it's in my building, whereas that's not IP-based.
Yeah, I think the best solution will be using the built-in split DNS option. So you have the ability to actually do a split DNS within the configuration, and that way you'll be routing those users to internal DNS records, so they'll talk to those servers directly rather than going through Jamf Security Cloud. So that's possible. Mm-hmm.
Next question. You had a question?
So, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. With ZTNA, we can, define various access policies for each of the corporate applications, and I also understand that it ensures that only the authorized users with secure devices can access these corporate applications. So when we have ZTNA in place, why do we need Jamf to pair with Intune or Google Beyond Corp for the conditional access, because CTNA in a way does this conditional access by only providing secure access to corporate resources. So I always have this confusion. Isn't this a duplication when the conditional access policy with the Intune and Google Beyond Corp, where Jamf has partnered? So I have a couple of questions. That's my first question. And my second question is, what are the other, does CTNA support all IDPs? Third question is regarding Jamf Trust. Jamf Trust, do you need any separate license for that, or is that something which comes as part of the package when we buy license for Jamf Protect and CTNA? So please.
I can start with the last question. Jamf Trust is included as part of Jamf Security Cloud, so there's no additional license to deploy Jamf Trust. Of course, the ZTNA, it's part of Jamf Connect, right? Your second question was about the IDP. Yes, thank you. We support the three IDPs that we covered today, so Entra ID, Okta, and Google at this point. The first question, Tyler, I think you can.
Can you ask the question again? I don't know if I understood it.
Yep. So what I understand is CTNA, we can set these access policies for each of the corporate applications, as you rightly said, and it also ensures, through split tunneling, only the authorized user and the secure device can connect to each of these corporate applications. So in a way, it acts as the conditional access to all of these corporate resources. So when we have CTNA as a product here, what is the need for Jamf to pair with Intune as well as Google Beyond Corp for the conditional access policy? So I always find that as a duplication here, because when Jamf already has a product on its own for CTNA, why do we need to partner with Microsoft or Google for this conditional access policies, or is that something different?
Right. So with ZTNA, like the reason why you need to use your identity provider is because those are the guys that are going to be the source of truth and how it actually gets routed. Jamf Trust and the activation profile is essentially the messenger that they're getting from the IDP that says, okay, I have a user that wants to authenticate to this application, and they are a part of this egress region, and based on this compliance policy, this is how we're going to route it. You can create additional compliance policies if you'd like to, but this also works with your existing conditional access policies with like and/or statements, basically.
So we have this conditional access policy set with Microsoft, right, where Jamf has partnered with Microsoft and Google Beyond Corp for this conditional access policies. So that's where I have that clarification, because CTNA already does this conditional access without pairing with any other partner.
Are you talking about device compliance? Maybe is that where you're referring to?
Yeah, the conditional access policies along with Intune, where Jamf has partnered with Intune for the conditional access policies. And the same thing we also have with Google Beyond Corp, where I see Jamf has partnered with Google Beyond Corp for the same process for conditional access policies.
I see. So device compliance is a little bit different. I think that's what you're talking about.
The old legacy name was conditional access policies. Yeah, right now it's changed to device compliance. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Sorry, I use the old term. Yeah,
it's so good. So yeah, device compliance will just flag the device as compliant or not based on your specific requirements within Jamf Pro, right? So that's slightly different. You can also use device compliance along with ZTNA. You can combine that into your conditional access policies and say, well, the device must be compliant in addition to require ZTNA or the egress IP addresses that they have to be coming through. So they can work together, but they are slightly different in how you can implement them. I'll be happy to go offline and talk more about your specific environment and see how ZTNA can help or what's the relation there.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hi.
You mentioned the IDPs, just to work, piggyback on that. Are you planning on supporting others in the future?
I would hope so. I haven't heard anything down the pipeline yet, but
Okay.
have you?
CyberArk.
CyberArk? That one we might be. I've heard of that also coming to Jamf Connect, coming down
really?
the pipeline. I've heard of it, yeah. I don't know when.
Yeah, we don't have any specific
No.
information, but we hope that we can hopefully, have more IDPs implemented.
Yeah.
Support, right?
Yeah, ping.
Oh, ping, yeah.
Identity.
Yep.
And then I have a question. So I have some access policies for enterprise resources, specifically file shares in our Minneapolis office and a New York office. And so I've set up dedicated IPsec gateways to each of those. But my users, I'm trying to get them off of our traditional VPN, but they complain that the speed, the latency is not as good as the traditional VPN. And specifically our Minnesota offices, because we have people that are fairly, in close proximity to the office. The traditional VPN is, they're connecting to our hardware 20 miles away. When going through Jamf Trust, they are connecting through that gateway, which we've tried the North American Canada egress region in Toronto, as well as the US East. And they complain that the speeds aren't good. So A, is there a way, or is there something that I might be doing wrong that's causing that slowdown? And B, are you looking at possibly increasing egress regions, maybe like a Chicago region or Minneapolis point?
So I don't have the answer for part B.
Okay.
For part A, when you're selecting which egress region that you want your data to go to, you're limited to those specific IPs. From all the testing and stuff that I've done, if you set your routing to the nearest location, right? Is your data allowed to leave the US?
Is it allowed to? Yeah.
Yeah.
We could.
So if you set it that, that is going to utilize all of the IP ranges that we were showing you earlier. And Jamf Trust is then going to take the one that has the lowest latency and then use that as the tunnel so that it's not just limited strictly to those. Because if there's other customers, for example, that are using those same regions, that could be what's taking up like the bandwidth, so to say.
So how do you define multiple regions within IPsec gateway?
We can take a look at the policy, see how you have it configured. It could be, like Tyler said, it could be the egress region that's been used, but we can take a look at. We're happy to review that for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last question, you mentioned that Jamf Trust will do push notifications. What are some of those notifications that would show up?
Yeah, so like an example, if a user is on their iPhone and they go through an email and they click on a link and it ends up being a phishing link, they're going to get a notification from Jamf Trust saying, hey, we just blocked this, but you just clicked on a phishing link.
Yeah.
And that works across all platforms.
Yeah. Also, I just want to add to that. So if you're using, ZTNA is one of the services that we have within Jamf Security Cloud. We also have content filtering. We also have network threat protection. So if you configure those additional services, then you'll get notifications when you visit a phishing site or you go to a bad actor website. Will notify the user. You can configure those notifications as well. You may get a notification when it comes to ZTNA, if, for example, the phone has lost access to internet.
Yep.
They'll see, hey, your device has no network connection. You can't access company resources because there's no network access.
Are there any other questions? We have time for maybe 1 to 2 more. Got another one? Yeah, no problem.
Just wanted clarification. You mentioned that access policies alone aren't enough. And just to be clear, the PI is, what you're referring to. You just need to make sure that all those are all set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if that PI is something that you guys want added to that resources QR that we gave you, I can add it there for you so that you guys can make sure that you have each piece of the pie.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, if you did want to talk maybe privately or offline, Tyler and Hector said they are more than happy to connect outside the hall here, since we do have another session immediately after this one.
Yep.
Tyler, Hector, great job. Thank you so much for this session.